We're going to talk, we're going to have an open reflection, and we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk about 3 kinds of feedback: communication awareness, some examples, and some frameworks for giving good feedback to each other. So let's take 3 minutes and think about a couple of pieces of feedback in the recent past that you found tough to receive. And like, just think about some of the most immediate thoughts to go through your mind as you receive this feedback. 3 minutes till 1:05.
Hey, Mike, if you have a chance, do you mind dropping these slides in the...
Yeah. Take another minute. There's a fly buzzing on my monitor, and it's driving me crazy. So if you see me like kind of grab things there, that's what I'm doing. Cool. So hopefully you've all thought about some feedback. That was kind of difficult to receive, and thought about a little bit why. I'm not going to ask you to kind of share because I think that like a lot of that's a little personal. But I think that it is good to kind of think about it and kind of frame this conversation that we're going to have with that in mind, right? And so, like, we have these 3 triggers that we have when we getting feedback, right? The truth is that you disagree with the facts of the feedback. Relationship is that your relationship with the giver affects your ability to take feedback. I think that and identity, the feedback affects our sense of who we are. I think this is like really, really kind of telling because I can just think about like my personal like gut reactions to feedback sometimes, especially if it's not great feedback. It's like, this, say someone telling me like this isn't good. It's like, no, of course it's good. I'm awesome. I'm amazing. All things I touch are just instantly fantastic. How could your feedback's wrong? Relationship, like I think it's tough. Like when you get feedback and someone you're like predispositions, like you don't like them, and like for whatever reason, it can be just like like sometimes you just don't like people, and that's a thing, and they give you feedback and immediately you get like the hair at the back of your neck kind of gets up on end and you're just like you become very defensive. Identity, the feedback affects our sense of who we are. Like if like I think that as again truthfully so because I'm the most amazing, if someone tells me, gives me feedback and information that conflicts with my idea of myself, that can be very kind of hard to kind of like take yourself out of that and kind of think about. And so in order to recognize that like these are like not great responses that we can have to feedback, we got to think about the kind of feedback we're hearing. And generally, the three kinds are appreciation, coaching, evaluation, right? You all have experienced some of the evaluation already, your project mock evals that we had last week. Last week. What is time anymore? It's 2020. Nothing matters anymore. But when we talk about appreciation, right? And that's when we're giving thanks to our partner, and we want to encourage our partner to keep doing the thing that's great, right? And that I think we talk about when we give feedback to someone, we want to be specific, actionable, and kind, right? And for appreciative feedback to be effective, we want to be specific, right? Because you don't want to say, I don't want to be like, hey, keep doing you. And someone that's receiving that, I'm like, yeah, that feels good, right? You're like, yeah, all this is great, but like, I would like to know, specifically, like, what part of all this do you want to keep going? Authentic, right? It has to be something that where, like, you genuinely feel it. Like, if I were to say to you, like, yes, what you have done here is perfectly acceptable. Like that, does that really feel good if I were to tell you? Like, no, that doesn't feel good. If it feels like the person's kind of struggling to it, and deliver it in a form that works for you. Like, I think that I'm not a person who feels that comfortable giving direct verbal feedback. I'm like, hey, I really appreciate, like, that is, I think that if I were to try that, it would come off as inauthentic. I think students have decoded. I just remember one student in the past like said during a group retro is that when I say something's fine, that actually means it's good. And that they had to figure out that code about me. And then when they said, like, I thought, I'm like, yeah, you're not wrong there. You're not wrong there. And so like for me, I think that I personally struggle with giving like really positive, appreciative feedback in person. But like, I think, has anyone ever read the like uh love languages book about how people express love and affection in different ways? Like, I'm a acts of service person, so like instead of me appreciating someone, I'll like like I'll drop a piece of candy on someone's desk or something like that. That is like me. I also don't do with written notes as well. Like, feelings are a tough thing for me. I have a therapist, don't worry, I'm working through it. And again, it's very important you do things in an authentic way, right? I think people innately have essentially a bullshit detector, right? And they feel that when people aren't doing things in an authentic manner. Coaching is, excuse me, discussing a better way in which we can help you grow, right? And coaching can be related to improving your skills or fix or perceived balance in a relationship. And like, kind of the effective things here are listening, asking questions, right? And making this being a two-way thing. Like I think that we all come from different walks of life with different childhood experiences and different set of experiences that kind of shape all of us. And understanding, like, hey, a person could be completely unaware of like the effect of potentially their words or actions, or that you could be just kind of like a communication impasse where two people with different kind of worldviews do things with all the best of intentions, right? And it just doesn't work, and that's okay too. And I think that a good important part of that is going to be that listening and asking questions piece of it. And let's scroll through the slides here. And finally, evaluation is telling your partner where they stand compared to a standard, compared to others, right? And an evaluation kind of feedback aligns expectations and clarifies consequences. And to be effective, we want to make sure that the standards and expectations are clear. That's why we have that rubric in our project evaluations. And this is a kind of thing that like kind of aligns our expectations, like gets everyone on the same page and informs your decision making. So let's take a couple minutes. Let's read through this and let's see if we can identify which of these three feedback things is which kind. So let's take, does 3 minutes sound reasonable? I don't know how fast other people read, so we'll call 3 minutes. If we need more time, we'll take more time. All right. um, uh, one, I looked at the chat. I want to address two things. One, Priya, I don't look at the notes in the slideshow because I like to. I see teaching at Turing as my first step on the road to stand-up comedy. Um, y'all are like my out of town preview for when I decide that for the time that Netflix comes calling and decides like, hey, it's time to call you up from the minors. So I have not actually looked at the notes because I kind of like I do like to give you like not necessarily what the thoughts of what someone else, but my genuine thoughts. Second, acts of cheese. I literally found this on the internet. And I proposed to staff when we were still all in the same place, what if we pitched in on this and just had this in the office? And I love that one of the features is it's extravagant. Is a feature of this cheese. But I pitched, and it was kind of there were a couple of people who were interested in going splitsies on this, but we all decided that if we did this, like the staff would die of heart disease. From a 72-pound cheese wheel. Because if it's just there, what are you gonna do? Like I'm feeling a little peckish. Let's go get some cheese. So reasons. So the first type of feedback, you don't want to jump in, and I gotta close the window with the cheese. I'll just be staring at that and drooling the entire class. Okay. Let's go. Drew, what do you think? What about the first one? Which kind of like type of feedback is the first one?
Well, I figured this out without the notes because
good for you.
That's the kind of guy I am.
Mm-hmm.
I went with appreciation because you are telling. I mean, admire is kind of a word that comes back.
That's appreciative. Yeah, I would consider that as such.
And really complimentary, and yeah.
Cool. Second one, let's go. Let's see, who's not paying attention in video? It looks like they're not. Oh, and Saren's head snaps right up. I mean, it's like Jurassic Park, like eyes are attracted to quick motions. So Saren, with the second one. Unmute yourself. Still muted. Try now. Okay. All right, we're going to take that as technical difficulties. Let's go Sean. Just because I love Calvin and Hobbes.
I would say the second one was coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what makes you say that?
Yeah, like how you said, or how it said, I would have liked to hear your ideas more, like back in the brainstorming stage. You could have put yourself out there more, and we could have, addressed maybe issues A, B, and C.
Cool. And let's see. Garrett, the last one.
Can it be a mix of two?
Tell me what you're thinking.
Evaluation, maybe?
Uh-huh. And what was the other one you were thinking?
Evaluation and appreciation.
Yeah. I think I think that's really right on. I think that like you started off with compared to, that makes me think like we're comparing to a standard, so that's evaluation. But yeah, like it's also very appreciative. And I think that like it doesn't have to be like one at a time, right? It definitely can be that mix. And I think that like people talk about the compliment sandwich. Is anyone not familiar with the compliment sandwich? Is like when you're not going to say something that's maybe like potentially critical, like let's lead off with something positive and then end with something positive, right? I think that like people are usually more amenable to like receiving feedback that way. I think they are, like, again, that maybe someone else's experience that they're not, but I think that like it's important to kind of think about those kinds of things. Cool. Moving on. How do we communicate better, right? And I think that this slide is very telling because certainly that there is always going to, I think, because we are human beings and everyone except for me is inherently flawed, that there will be this disconnect between intent and impact, right? What we say may have a different, a different, oh, I just lost it. What we mean to say may have different results than what we intended, right? I think that I would like to think that generally people have like the best intentions. And I think it's important for us to assume that people have the best intentions at heart, even if it doesn't quite work out the way they intended or things like that. And so intent is the purpose behind the giver's message, and there's your impact is how the receiver is affected by that message. Like some certain piece of feedback is, I think you should work on being more confident. And intent is like, hey, when you don't know something, I want you to be able to admit it. Whereas the impact is like, you come across as doubtful or passive. Instead, you should give others impressions you always have the answers, be it phony. And we can see that like just a simple statement such as, I think you should work on being more confident. Like the person's like, hey, it's okay not to know the answer. And I think that I want to communicate that clearly to you all, is that it is okay for you all never have the answer, never have the, wait, words are mashing together. It is okay for everyone to not have an answer at certain times. And it is very important that we're able to admit it. I know that's something I struggle with, like, especially like being in front of here, talking to you about stuff. Like, I think that deep down in the back of my head, I have this innate kind of need to be like, hey, I should have all the answers. This is literally my job. But I think that doing that, it adds, like, it would make me feel inauthentic to you to do that. And so like, I will do my best to always kind of tell you that, like, hey, I don't know a thing. And like, this is maybe the impact of like a kind of statement like that. So we want to be aware of dead angles, and and some of these things is like, including your facial expressions, your tone of voice, and your behavior patterns. And the idea is that when we give feedback, when we communicate to other people, we start with our thoughts and our feelings, and then they get filtered through our intentions, and then your behavior, and then your impact on other that influences the other story about yourself, right? And so we want to think of like what kind of these dead angles should be aware of when we're providing written feedback, right? Has anyone here ever had something they said in a text message completely interpreted the wrong way? Yeah.
There's a Key and Peele skit about that.
Definitely.
Yes, that's a good one. I saw a skit recently. There's a sentence, I didn't kill your dog, and the meaning of the sentence changes depending on what word you emphasize. Like, I didn't kill your dog. I didn't kill your dog. It's like very, very kind of varied meanings, just like depending on what single word you put emphasize on. And I see Priya saying it to herself and just like, yes, like, I didn't kill your dog. Like, same sentence. 5 words, yet with one single intonation change, we can convey 5 wholly different meanings. Cool. So the idea is that dead angles are things we don't see potentially, often lead to our biases, right? And we talked about bias, and we have positive and negative bias towards others can affect our abilities to give effective feedback. We may be more likely not to give constructive feedback to people who are similar to us, because if someone's similar to us, you kind of like, I think that you have this thought, I'm like, oh no, they're like me, so they're thinking the same thoughts I'm thinking. Well, like, no one thinks the same thoughts as you. No one is exactly the kind of same thing. And we may be overly critical for people whom we may have a bias. One of my best friends dated someone I did not like. There was not a thing this woman could do right. I swear, there was not a thing. Like, could have donated $1 million to charity and be like, just wants the attention. Like, I could have, like, there was literally nothing that could have happened. And I think that is an extreme, version of this, but like, yeah, we are going to be overly critical for people who we already have this kind of a negative bias towards. Excuse me. And I think it's important for all of us to realize this, that like in every interaction, we should try to like see like, hey, do I have any kind of biases, things I don't know, like that may kind of influence upon this, right? And so like bias affects how we take the feedback we receive. Like someone that's close to you, someone that's like you view as similar, if they give you some like critical feedback, you're like, yeah. I'll be like, yeah, totally, I get that. Someone you don't like, gosh, if someone I did not like gave me feedback, my first instinct be like, I'm doubling down. I'm going to do double what they didn't like me doing because I am that person who does that kind of thing. Trying not to be, trying to like view things and be a better person. But you know, sometimes it's hard and that's okay. And that's what I tell myself. Cool. Again, coming back to, oh wait, we were there already. I'm clicking on the wrong thing. Here we go. So I'm going to move you into breakout groups, right? And we're going to take about 10 minutes to go over this kind of stuff. Go over this slide. This slide, the link to the slide, I think someone posted in your Zoom chat, and I also posted in your Slack channel. This is slide number 18. I'm going to put you in breakout groups, and I'd like you to answer the 3 questions. What kind of feedback of this? What is missing or needs more specifics? And how might you reframe this feedback? So, breakout rooms. I'm going to put you in rooms 04. And this will be 10 minutes. And it will count down, pull you back out. Cool. And there you go. Again, all right. So we had some good discussions on how you can improve that feedback, but moving along, we want to talk about how we can give feedback. And one of the best ways is use a framework, like use this process to craft your feedback. And you can be sure that like we can make our intent line up a little more closely with our impact. And so communication frameworks often come in 3s. When we have crucial conversations, we have facts, we have feelings, and we ask. Our Turing guidelines are specific, actionable kind. And we think about SBI, which is the situation, behavior, and the impact. And so, oops, where am I? All right. Like when we want to put specific actionable kinds of action, we want to take a look at the situation, right? We want to define when and where the situation, puts the feedback into context, gives the other person a specific setting as a reference. Like this kind of falls under the specific, right? You don't want to be like, oh, remember when you did that thing, that the other thing happened, but way back in the past times? Like, no, it's like, hey, like I think one of the examples, like you keep showing late to the meetings, like, hey, the last 2 weekly meetings you had, you've been late to both of them, right? This calls out like specific instances where they can remember, like, okay, I can certainly recall like instances where this happens. An example here, like during work time yesterday when you leave that feature, the instructor check-in like last Monday afternoon or whenever. We want to kind of frame these because the things like, you know, if you don't tag it to a specific timeline or incident, it's like it can be very confusing. Like, like I said, especially in 2020 when time no longer exists. Like who here remembers that we had wildfires this year? I thought that was like 5 years ago, but no, still 2020. And so we want to talk about the behavior in that we want to describe the behaviors that you want to address. And we want to, I think it's very important to communicate only the behaviors that you observe directly, like things they did that you saw, and not hearsay. Or like, you know, we want to very, I think this applies to all places in life. Like we don't want to make assumptions or subjective judgments about these behaviors. Assumptions are bad. There's an 80s sitcom, and I don't know why this this line says that when you make an assumption, you look like an ass and ump will shun you. I don't know why that's the thing that stuck out in a sitcom from the 80s in my head, but whenever I see the word assumption, I bear that lesson in heart that I will look like an ass if I make an assumption and ump will shun me. And some examples of this, like during work time yesterday, when you completed that feature, you did not ask me to review PR before pushing to code. We had written DTR that we'd review each other's code as part of the workflow. Another example is at the check-in with the instructor on Monday afternoon. I saw you point out the code that I wrote, and you mentioned that you learned a lot from it. Right? Those are kind of like the specific pieces of that. And when we think about impact, you want to describe the impact the behavior had you on the project, right? Like you want to use the I statement referring to yourself, because I think it is because it is presumptive to say we, right? Like you can only really validate how you're feeling, and like using first person plurals or plurals in any regard is part of that assumptiveness that we're talking about. And we want to make it actual, like, hey, we want to say like, hey, this is the behavior that, like, you know, something that we didn't agree on in DTR, but like this is something we can build in. Like this is like kind of what we would like to do instead, right? We like would any of you be happy if I, like, during a project I was like, hey, this bit of code here, yeah, next time just do better, just be better. I mean, I don't think anyone would be happy, but, you know, I think it'd be funny if I said it as like a joke and you knew it was a joke, but like, no, that is not specific, not really actionable, right? Like, how do you measure it? Be better, you know? Also, the reverse of that, like, don't say, I'm not going to say any of you, be less worse. Oh, that's even better. That's even worse than be better. But, you know, like, this is not specific. It's not actionable. It's not kind. I'm not giving you some kind of specific event or marker to tie behaviors to. Heck, there wasn't even like any real behavior. Like, you know, and like and the idea is that like impact, I'm like I'm not saying like what kind of impact that behavior had on me. I'm just saying like, yeah, just generally like be better. Like, I've received this big piece of feedback before. Don't suck. Like that helps absolutely no one. Someone on staff who will remain unnamed once told me that made my eyes bleed, in jest, but still, like, that's not kind of the kind of feedback you want to be giving to people. Like, I knew that was a joke, but still a little bit inside. Heck, that was like 4 years ago and I still remember it. Right? Like, think about, like, I think it's very important to think that our words have I don't want to say consequences, that sounds cliche, but they have impacts, right? And we want to make sure that they're the right kind of impacts. And so, example here, I'm concerned that not taking time to review our code will result in more bugs. I also wish I could have learned more about the code from reviewing it. I really appreciate that you took the time to acknowledge what I did. I'm glad I was able to help you learn too. Right? These are things that are kind of like it's very important to use the word I. I think that, like, that's something that really stuck out with me, and then, like, something that you don't really think about, like being specific to use the word I, but it's very, very important to giving kind of feedback. And so to kind of sum this all up, frameworks give us the ability to use effective feedback. You know, we have facts, we have feelings, we have the ask. We want our guidelines for feedback is that we want to be specific, actionable, and kind. And we want to think about the situation, the behavior, and the impact. So these are some other ideas around giving feedback. We want to make sure that you want to consider what feedback would be helpful for my partner's loading and coding career. What should my partner consider working with someone like me in the future? What should my partner consider working with someone who's different from me in the future? And how can my partner build on what's doing well? I think that it's very, as we kind of wrap this up, I think it's critically important us to consider the impact that our words have on other people. And I think, like, very specifically that if you take nothing else from this session, remember that there is always going to be a disconnect between our intent and our impact. As an instructor, I have personally seen students who I really enjoyed as human beings, as students, and as people, give like the most horrific and bad feedback to other students, like enough to me go like, oh, just like so bad that I averted my eyes. Like, and like the thing is that their intent was they were trying to be, they had like the best intent at heart, but like the impact was devastating. So I would like to challenge all of you to really, really, whenever you're giving feedback, like to consider that difference between intent and impact. And I think that with that being said, I think it's also really important for us to kind of take a step back and realize that maybe if someone has not given the best feedback with impact, that we take the space to like let them know like, hey, I think there's a disconnect between your intent and your impact, and like to recognize like, hey, we are all learning how to do this. Like I think that certainly that I have a very far to go in terms of making sure that my intent aligns with my impact. And I think that we are only people, and that we should kind of like assume that people have the best intent at heart, and give them the space and give them like give them the opportunity to be their best selves. Any questions from you all about the things we've talked about today? I see some head shakes, see some thumbs up. Cool. That is it from me. Couple things I want to mention is that in the slides, we have write some feedback examples. Like I would ask that you do this. You start working on the feedback you want to give your partner. That will be delivered at the end of your project. I just want you to, this is not something you have to do now because you're like, what day is it? It's Tuesday. So is it reasonable to ask you to write feedback for your partner? Like after not even, slightly over 24 hours of being on a project? No, but I want you to start thinking about the process as to how you're going to construct the feedback at the conclusion of this project. Right. So, this will be due Monday, week 4. So you'll have time to do that. And all this is in the slides. Cool. What is next on your calendar?
Hashes.
Oh, hashes. Fun for a certain subset of you. It's okay. Like I had trouble with hashes too. When I first encountered hashes, I was like, what is the point of this?